Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, licensed professional counselor and a person who loves to help you achieve your best. Tonight, we have another exciting guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. But if you've been here before, you know what we do. We start off with some deep breathing. Why? It allows you to clear your head, put more oxygen in your body, and help you have that woosah moment. So, if you've never been here before, let me tell you what we do. You're going to take in 3 deep breaths. I will count to 4 and you'll breathe in slowly, and I'll count to 4 and you'll breathe out slowly. You're going to breathe so deeply that you'll feel your stomach rise because you're not going to breathe just to your chest. You're going to breathe all the way in, lung filling breathing. So let's practice. Let's go for it. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Just that moment to breathe, chill, relax. How was that breathing for you, Dr. Kamala Williams?
That was great. I needed that to keep.
Right. And I always like to remind people that's something you can do at any time when you're feeling stressed. Take those deep breaths to just get more oxygen in your brain. It also helps you make better decisions because when people are upset and anxious and you get that upset, you don't make good choices. So we breathe any time of day. Well, I have an exciting guest here today, Kamala Williams, and we met when we were in college. She was in college, I was in grad school. I went straight through, so made lots of friends, lifelong friends, and I have these wonderful intellectual friends that are always I'm always calling to be on my show, and Cam is no exception. She is one of those great minds that I love to talk to. So, tonight we're going to talk about Alzheimer's, something that impacts our community, definitely impacts the mental well being of our community. And wow, we're going to figure out what's it like to be a caregiver. But first, before we get started in that, Kamala, tell us a little about yourself. Who are you and something cool about you?
Well, something cool about me. I don't know. I had to really think about that. But I am, well, I'll tell you something exciting. I am a new grandmother. One,
Congratulations.
yeah, 1 month ago today, my son had a baby, James, Carter James Williams. So I'm a newly minted grandmother. I have 2 children, Ashton and Johnston. They're both young adults. And I live in Houston, Texas. From Houston originally. I went to University of North Texas where I met you back, way back when. Not too far back though.
Not that far back,
Not that
yes.
far back. And I have my bachelor's from North Texas and a master's and a doctorate from Texas A&M in College Station. So I am the middle child. That might explain a lot of my issues. But I'm the middle child. I have 2 sisters that live here in Houston as well.
And Cam and I share that. I'm the middle child of, 3 girls. So yeah, us middle girls, we're just awesome. What can we
Special.
say? So we're going to talk about Alzheimer's, but tonight, from the point of view and the perspective of someone who has cared for parents who had Alzheimer's and looking at the disease that way. But right now, this phase of the show, we're just looking at, but what is a personal impact? What is a psychological impact?
Mhm.
Before we get into that part, I want to put you in a frame of mind to also think about the person who is being cared for. Most of us don't like to be cared for. Now, there's some people want everybody to just wait on them hand and foot, but most people want that sense of independence. And even if you're just ill a little bit, it doesn't feel good to have somebody get up and do something for you. Recently, I had since July, I've had like 2 surgeries, and in that process lost some of that ability to just get up and run. One of them was on my foot, so I literally lost the ability at that moment to get up and run. And your care, someone is doing something for you. It's an odd feeling. Now that's just minor. Imagine you know your mind is slipping away, and someone has to take care of you, and it's the person that you took care of. So I want you just to be in mind as you hear the caregiver story, keep in mind the impact it would have if that were your story. So, Cam, you took care of both of your parents. Tell me a little though, what were your parents like when you were growing up before the change happens? Or just tell me your story.
Okay, Brahman, thank you so much for allowing me on the show. Thank you. It's my honor to be here to talk about my experience as a caregiver. I'm glad you asked that question because I have a couple of projects I'm working on that I share my story of as a caregiver. And I think, well, the both projects they start off with the story of my parents because in caring for them, I always had to keep who they were in my forefront to remember that, to remember them. And I think that's important. It was very important for me. My mom is a retired teacher of over 30 years in Houston. My dad was a retired postal worker in Houston for over 30 years. They raised me and my sisters. They would have been married this year, would have been 66 years. They were active members of their church. My mom was a Sunday school teacher and a special ed teacher as in her profession. She taught special ed in HISD. So they met in college. They're both went to Prairie View, both had master's degrees, but they were very active in our lives, both me and my sister. They were very active in taking us to practices, making sure that we were exposed to concerts and events. And they were great providers, very stable home environment. That's who my parents were, which whenever I think about that and everything they did for me, um, it was it made taking care of them so much easier,
Mhm.
mentally sometimes and physically not so much. But they would collide at times. But it was a decision I made based on knowing who they were in my life. So those are my parents, James and Claude Stewart.
And the reason I wanted you to talk about them when growing up, because when a person is, has Alzheimer's, and as it progresses, it changes who they are.
It absolutely does change who they are. Yeah, and I had to remember who they were because as I saw them become something different and their personality changed, I had to reflect often on who they were to me, who they were to my children, who they were to my husband. And we all had to constantly think about that. That's not who they are. This is the disease that we're seeing. This is not them.
Mhm.
That mom wouldn't do that or dad wouldn't do that. If he knew what he was doing, would he do this or would he do that? And the answer would be no. So I always had to keep in front of me all the time who they were because that's not who I was experiencing
Mhm.
and who I was seeing.
One of the things we think about when looking at just the mental health aspect of being a caregiver of someone with Alzheimer's, your grieving process starts before the person transitions.
Oh,
So often people grieve the person they knew.
mhm.
How was that for you? Is that something that you experienced, that you're grieving? You're grieving because that's not mom, that's not dad.
Right. That is something because I brought my parents to live with me, and I don't say they moved in with me because that's not really how it happened. I brought them to my home in October of 2014, and I called it a staycation because
Mm.
they were going to stay with me, but for the first 5 years, I tried to treat it like a vacation because they would often at that time ask me to go home. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I took them back to their home. When they moved in with me, they never spent the night at their house again from October of 2014.
Mm.
They never stayed in their home. They were at my house. But the grieving, I initially did not know what I was experiencing. I sought a counselor like you to help me navigate some of what I was feeling, um, because I didn't really know. I thought it was initially the death of my mother-in-law, which she passed during this time, and we were very close, and she had assured me that she would help me take on helping my daughter who was adulting, and she was kind of going through her own thing. She's like, you take care of your parents, I'm going to help you take care of Ashton. And Ashton had gone away to school. Well, my mother-in-law passed away, and I initially thought it was her because I was feeling so down and everything, but it was actually my daughter who helped me, and she put it into perspective for me. She's like, Mom, you lost your go-to girl. And she was referring to
Mm.
my mom, because my mom and I were very close. My daughter and I are very close. My sister shopped, but me and my mom, we shopped. You know, we would shop for anything. Love shopping, love just leaving in the morning, not coming back until night, talking on the phone as I drove from work or different things. It was nothing for my mom to drive on the other side of town to hang out, to do whatever. So not having that, and wanting to go and talk to her about whatever was going on, and just not being able to do that, I felt so sad. But I didn't associate it with my mom having dementia or me losing her at the time. It actually took some time for me to process that's what was happening. And I read just a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, that like having Alzheimer's and or being with someone with Alzheimer's is like the long goodbye, because
Mm.
for me it was it's still a long goodbye, because my mom is still with me, thank the Lord. I lost my dad in June of this year. They both had the disease, and it was every day, seeing them a little less of them every day is very taxing emotionally, and can take a lot out of a person. It's very taxing.
I
So,
can only imagine that long goodbye. That's a pretty powerful statement because it is.
mhm,
And when you think about it, it's a goodbye you're saying every day that you don't want to end.
yes, it is. And just even seeing them, and just, I think we talked about this a little bit. You are accustomed in our minds to seeing people progress. Your baby, I'm a new grandmother, so I, hadn't seen my grandbaby in a few days, and I saw him last night, and I could see the changes. I could already see it. He can already do some things that he couldn't do, and that's what our brains are kind of hardwired to do, is
Mhm.
to see progress, to see us go forward, to see from dependence to independence. That's what we do. They can't feed themselves, they can't clothe themselves, and then they can. And as a mother, you kind of get a little sad. Oh, they don't need me anymore, that kind of thing. But then you really inside, you're like, oh yeah, they don't need me as much anymore.
Mhm.
But we aren't really, I don't think, hardwired to go backwards in that process, especially, and I don't know, I say especially when it comes to your parents, because they're mine and that's my experience. I'm sure people with other experiences can say, say something different. But for me and my experience, to see my parents go backwards from being independent to being totally dependent was it's painstaking, because they can't do anything for themselves, and you have to constantly keep in the front of you. Would they if they could? And you have to all these adjustments. It's like set, reset, adjust, set, reset, adjust,
Mhm.
all the time when you're taking care. And mind you, it was two. It was both my mom and my dad. Who my mom, very independent, very strong-willed person, career woman, um, just financially sound, made good decisions, very just independent. My dad, good provider, So to go, who took care of everything, took care of everything for us as a family. And then even after I was married, me and my sisters, we kind of tease about my dad staying on my husband and my brother-in-laws about little things like, hey, is there gas in that car? Hey, your inspection sticker is due. So going from that to me and us having to do everything for them, it's not what we're naturally inclined, I think, to do. I think you have to adjust a lot to be able to do that.
You really do, because, like you say, it's not that natural progression. And I want to take us again back to the person,
Hmm.
because Alzheimer's is progressive. So when it starts, many people are aware of the decline. So man, how challenging it could be to be aware of the decline and having to be taken care of. We forget that it's not pleasant. It really isn't pleasant on either side.
Exactly.
It's
And
an act of love, but
it's
it's not pleasant.
it's not pleasant at all. And it's so many things. You just reminded me of so many things when you talk about the act, and just I became an advocate for my parents. I had to
Mhm,
advocate for them
mhm,
because even in the medical profession, things that you would think that were natural, or the doctor's offices of the medical profession as a whole would already
mhm,
know and be ready for and accustomed to, they just weren't. And simple things like, well, he can't answer that, or they don't know that, and they sometimes try to, like, not treat a patient with Alzheimer's like they're invisible, which they should not. But then there
mhm,
are other offices that are in situations, medical in particular, where they're talking to my parents, and I'm like, okay, do you expect for them to answer that? What are you doing here, or what are we doing? Or even just the simplest things become so complicated when you're talking about two patients with Alzheimer's. Getting your
mhm,
vision checked, you know, going to the
mhm,
dentist, getting your teeth cleaned, getting those, it's certain things you just, unless somebody's equipped to do that, they aren't equipped to do that. And even restaurants, going to a restaurant, and my dad, I can remember the first time I went to a restaurant and my dad had to go to the restroom. And it was just, okay, it's like, okay, who's gonna take it? Well, he can't just get up and go to the restroom. So
mhm,
then I had to go with him, but I took him in the women's restroom. So then now that's odd too. So I'm so thankful that now we're moving toward, many places
mhm,
have family restrooms, but that's public, big arenas and movie theaters and places like that. Restaurants really don't. I saw at the airport this weekend, it's at all gender. And I thought, okay, this would have benefited Daddy. He's not here anymore. But the lady, I saw a lady walking out, and she was still explaining to her little girl. She's like, "Mom, there's a man in the restroom," and that's how I was looked at when I had to take my
mhm,
dad into the restroom with me, because he didn't know what to do in a restroom. So it's little things like that. Same thing with my mom, having to do things for her and for them that just seem like someone else would be prepared, but you
mhm.
better be prepared. If you're going to be a caregiver, you better be prepared and think about at being ready to advocate for that person that you're caring for, because it's not that easy. People, you get stares, my dad and mom had Alzheimer's. My dad would do odd things, and
What were some things he would do that you would say were odd?
well, he might want to eat with his hands,
Mm.
or he might, take something off somebody else's plate, or different things like that. Just things that their behavior, it's different.
Mhm.
You know, he might, that seat might look like a toilet, and he might want to use it as a toilet. So just odd things, and so you really, it's a very busy time. It was a busy time. So it was for all of us, for me and for my family. But we got through it, and my mom is still here, like I said. So
You talked about, you mentioned earlier that you did go see a therapist.
I did.
What took you to that point to make you say, "Whoa, I need a little help"? What got you there?
Oh, let me see. That's a good question. I think I was crying all the time. And I was like, what is wrong? Why am I crying all the
Mhm.
and I had these emotional highs and lows, and I thought, okay, something I need help with this. I need help with navigating what I'm feeling because I was feeling many things at one time. I mean, I took my parents would ask to go home all the time. And I felt somewhat guilty about, okay, they can't go home, but it's not safe for them to go home. But they're asking me all the time. And so that was something that was one of the things dealing with my family in this situation. That was another thing. How we learn to navigate together, taking care of my parents. But just knowing that the counselor was not going to um, be able to she was going to help guide me to solutions. It was a she,
Mhm.
so I don't mind saying she. She's going to help me learn how to find my own solutions because at that time I felt like I needed more than just my friends who were great,
Mhm.
they were great, but I needed impartial suggestions and techniques, and breathing was one of them that I learned, in meditating and just being quiet and sometimes just talking it out
Mhm.
it really helped me. So yes, I did seek counseling for years.
And that's why I wanted to bring that out. Some people also in that position of a caregiver, one, I don't have time.
I
Two, I
have
really don't need help. I'm good. They're the issue. But no, it's good to know how to take care of yourself. So I'm glad you sought that help. And it's to those who are listening who know someone who may be in this situation or you're in this situation. It's okay to get help. You need it too.
absolutely,
How did
absolutely.
it impact your family though? You had children. They were
Mhm.
still teens, I believe, when this moved in, when your parents moved in.
Right. In 2014, my son was a senior in high school. My
Okay.
daughter was in college. My mom used this phrase, going up Fool's Highway backwards. So anyway, you can put that together and figure out what she was. But she was in college out of state, but my son was in high school. So they were young adults, adulting
Mm-hmm.
that we use. So I think it impacted them as much as it impacted me. I'll talk about them and then I'll talk about my husband because they were in love with their grandparents. My parents were super grandparents. They were super supporters. They went to all their grandkids' events, no matter how far, no matter how boring, no matter how exciting, no matter how loud, they were always there. And so I think it was difficult. It was just as difficult for them to see their grandparents transition through this phase,
Mm-hmm.
experience this disease as it was for me. Also, I think what made it even more hard for them too was to see what I was going through. For them and my husband to see that was very difficult for them. Um, I can remember on my son specifically. My daughter, different personality, but I remember the first time my son saw as different stages of my dad's disease. I had different approaches to how to handle it. And
Mm-hmm.
at one time, he would chew on every and anything. So I looked it up, read about it, found out it was normal, and bought him these chew toys, right? These necklaces. And the first time my son saw that around his neck, he was like, what did you give granddaddy this for? Like, why is he chewing on this? We
Mm-hmm.
gave him something like a pacifier. And I said, well, it's for him so he won't chew the buttons off his shirt or chew on his hand or anything else. So this soothes him, and it's just a phase, and he'll be okay, and you'll be okay too. But I saw his response, and even at one point, my dad couldn't. We fed him through a bottle, a baby bottle, just if he could suck, he's better, and we could get him fed. And when my son saw that, he just flipped out. Why are y'all giving granddaddy a bottle? Like, no, don't do that. And so it was, what is it? Once a adult, twice a child,
Mm-hmm.
literally in my house, really like that. So for them emotionally, I think it impacted them a great deal. For my husband, wow, my husband, it was. my husband always teased my mom about being a favorite son-in-law. She's like, I know, mom. He called my parents mother and daddy. He called them mother and daddy, just like I call my mom. He called him daddy. He called my parents that he was that close to them.
Hmm.
And so, because he had this really close relationship with them, when my mom began to be very confrontational when it came to my dad, if you took something from him, told him no, told him he couldn't do something somewhere, she would attack you.
Mm.
She was very protective. My parents, if they were, if my dad was still alive, they would have been married 66 years this August. So they were together a long time.
Yes.
But she was very protective of him, and she would attack John quite frequently, and it hurt him. It hurt him personally. Um, he felt it very personal because when I met John, probably since I was a little girl, I knew I would be the person to take care of my parents. I just knew it was
Mm.
something I knew. So when we got married, I told him that. So it wasn't a big surprise. When we bought our first home, it would not have been equipped to handle me taking care of my parents. When we got ready to buy a second home, um, I told him the criteria. I did not go out to look for the house at all. He went and he found a house, and he was so excited that it would accommodate my parents. He was like, it has two bedrooms downstairs, a master and another bedroom and bathroom on the first floor. So he knew that was really necessary for me
Mhm.
because I always said I take care of my parents. And from the time we bought the house, we referred to that bedroom. Now this was before my parents, before
Mm.
they had Alzheimer's and before they moved in with me. We refer to it as Ma's room. That's what my kids call my mother. But they would say this is Ma's room. It had their picture in it. It was decorated for them, and that's where I knew they would be. So he was on board with taking care of my parents and never wavered in the decision that we made to take them into our
Mm.
home, even though it was hard and personal. Um, he didn't, he never wavered about that. He always was very supportive. And hey, this is what we're going to do. Even early last year, when I thought, okay, I'm I think I've done all I can. I'm just about worn out. I can't do it anymore. And he was like, what you gonna do? You got to stick it out. You got to stick it out. You got to, this is what we signed up for. And he would remind me when I was getting really tired. Okay, add more help, add more hours, go on a vacation, reset, go to the spa, go get your nails done, do something that'll make you feel better, or help you to be better at this. Separate and come back, because this is what we committed to
What
doing.
you got to do. I want to come back to that, but I want to ask you this about the family, sticking with the family a little more. Did you ever feel like, because you were the center of all of this, you're the core. Did it ever feel to you like you might have been neglecting your family, your husband, your
Oh,
children?
absolutely, I did, and still do. I'll start with my children first. I know I gave them a lot more responsibility than maybe, young adults that age, but they took it on and they didn't
Mhm.
complain. And so I am grateful for that, for them and for that. But yes, there were times when, like, say, I'm at my son's baseball game and I'm there, but I'm not totally there because my parents are here and I got to kind of watch them too. And I have to take them to the restroom, or I just got to make sure they're okay. So I was splitting my attention up and not just totally 100% maybe focusing on my son's game or my daughter's event, because I would have my parents with me. And so, that wasn't their whole life, but the part after,
Mhm.
2012, I mean, 2013, 14 or so on, yes, I did. And even just the time that I would give them. When my son was younger, and when he was at the beginning of high school, before my mom, my parents moved with us, he would come in and I'd be in my office at home. I have a home office, and he'd sit on the stoop, the stairs right there going into the office, and he'd talk to me, about whatever. Well, there wasn't a lot of time for that kind of stuff at that point. It was like, okay, how's it going? Your day's good? Okay, good, good, good. Because
Mhm.
I had other things to do. So my focus wasn't on them as much. Same thing with my daughter. They did not get as much of me because I had to give a part of me to my parents who needed me and needed me. I'm not going to say more, but they needed me. And it's just so much of you, that you can
You
give.
really have. But do
Yeah,
you think in all of this it made you closer to your children?
absolutely. And I'll say about my husband, as far as us, it took a while for, um, I mean, we eventually at a point we said, okay, Friday nights has to be our date night. So we instituted a date night every
Mhm.
Friday, no matter what. Even if we didn't go anywhere,
Mhm.
we had a sitter because it was going to be our date night. But before that, yes, even him I neglected in some ways because things he wanted to do, concerts, he loves live music. I was like, oh, I'm too tired, I don't feel like it, oh, go ahead and go by yourself kind of thing. So I
Mhm.
think that there was some neglect in that area too. And yeah, I do have some guilt about that. And as far as bringing us closer together, or what I think it did was it really bonded us in a real special way, because after so many years of keeping my parents, we knew that, well, my husband knew, and I began to know after having a counselor, that I needed time away. And so we started
Mhm.
these vacations, just the four of us together, no matter what. We took time together. And that's the time that we would use to talk about whatever was going on, just the four of us. And we would, go on trips, and they'd be a week long, sometimes less, but mostly those recently would be a week long. And we really just knew that that brought us really close together. Just just really bonded us, that made us appreciate each other more, that
Mhm.
made us love each other more, and in a way that we needed to be loved, because we learned more about each other just separating. And I saw them, both my kids, really mature, um, and be responsible in a different way because of what they were seeing at home. And really appreciate home, because our home dynamic was different too.
Mhm.
So that was something that we all had to adjust to as well, was sharing our home. Because if you have two parents with Alzheimer's, I started off with one caregiver, then I had to add another caregiver, and then another caregiver in the evening. And then last year was the first year I had to finally add someone 24 hours, because it was just way too much for me just by myself, with the both of them rapidly declining, or declining to a degree that you will with Alzheimer's. So over the years, I've added more and more people to our house and to care for them. Now our house isn't just our house. Our house is my parents' home too, which they require these caregivers. So it was
And what was that like? You can't just walk around the house like you want to
oh no,
because there are other people in here.
you got other people in here, and they're always in there. So it's
Mhm.
people coming and going. And so, if you think about your house, that's your place of refuge. You
It's
go
your
home.
sanctuary. But when
Yeah,
you have all these people in there,
it's
how does
not.
that impact your sanctuary?
Gosh. So I think for my kids and my husband, it was more than for me, maybe, in a way, because it made them a little uncomfortable. They were uncomfortable with all the people all the time. You can't just walk out with your robe on. You can't just say anything, even though you're at home and you want to holler, yell down the stairs, or say something crazy, or even look at something, on TV that maybe we wouldn't look at in front of some other people.
Mhm.
Just things like that. We always were, so for these years we were guarded in everything. And with my husband was kind of relic to our bedroom. And so the last few years, we'd watch TV in the bedroom all the time. We never hardly used the den area because that's where my parents were to watch TV and things like that. So, yeah, we shared our home with all these other people. And it's very intrusive. It's necessary, but you still feel a certain way, then just the going and coming. And when you do that, you open your home so people can come in and go as they please and as they need to. Just, it's necessary. So then you don't know when somebody's coming in or not. It's like, okay, they got the code, they can come in and they can come and go. And that's how it kind of had to be in order for me to keep my parents at my house. So we had to adjust to that. And it's not always comfortable, but it's necessary. But yeah, they were troopers, and it changed that. Yeah, it did. It changed our family dynamic.
But so many times in life we can go through what is in and of itself a negative situation, and Alzheimer's is.
It is.
But in that negative situation, we can come out stronger.
Yes.
The adversity can make you stronger. So I think for your children, having gone through that, watching that, gives them a different appreciation for life, just
Hmm.
life itself. When you see that side of life, it can make you maybe appreciate more what you do have, and appreciate family, have a different sense of love, and become stronger. It sounds like there are other ways it could go, but it
Yes.
sounds like for your children, that seems like it's where they are. It's just I'm stronger because of the adversity.
I totally agree with that. I think they're stronger. I think they love deeper. I think we're closer. And because of those things and those challenges, I would definitely do it again. If I had to go back to 2014 and do it all over, I would do it again because of how I've seen them grow, their maturity, their ability to not be so selfish. I mean, they're still in their 20s, so they're a little selfish, but I think they're so much further along than maybe I
Mhm.
was when I was in my 20s in maturity and how they care about other people, their genuineness about other people. So I
Mhm.
think that in that regard, I would do it again. Plus, I love my parents, and like I said, I lost my dad. I didn't say earlier that I lost my husband last year. So that, and I cared for him to some degree. Um, he had diabetes, but he didn't die from that. Well, I don't know that it wasn't complications to that, but he ended up having cancer. It happened so quick. It was pancreatic cancer, and it took him so fast to that period of me caring for him in that way wasn't a long extended time, but it was long enough for me to just to see what it's like really to care, because he tried to be, you mentioned earlier when you started the show how it feels to care for somebody and how the person feels, and that was like another long stretching thing because I said, Brian, I took my parents in October of 2014. In March of 2015, my husband, who was a diabetic, had a partial foot amputation, and I saw him um, try to be very independent, um, and not have me. And that was one of his things. You have enough. You got your parents. So don't
Mhm.
do this for me. You have enough. You have my parent. You have your parents. I heard that all the time. You have enough. You have enough. You have enough. Don't worry about me.
Did
And
you
that
feel like it though? Even when if he told you you have enough, what would you feel in regards to wanting to take care of the man you loved?
gosh, that's the guilt I feel now because I'm thinking, maybe I missed something. Maybe if I was paying more attention to this, maybe not that. But I know God knows, and I'm a believer, and so I know that that's not how it happened the way God wanted it to happen or intended, I guess. Um, and I know somebody may call me and tell me about me saying I guess, but yeah, I do. I feel like, maybe I missed something because I was so focused, my parents, on everything, every little bit of Alzheimer's I could read about, everything they
Mhm.
needed that I could help them. Okay, they need to be stimulated by this. Okay, music this. Okay, buy this. Okay, do that. Get them in this, get them in that. And so all of that focus and attention was on them and not him. And he was the person I was married to. So, yeah,
And
there's a
even though that was where your focus, that's also where he wanted your focus to be.
that's where he wanted. He did. He did. He was like, I can do this on my own. And then, he tried and he did. He did great. He never stopped being as independent as he could, and really taking care of our family in a great way.
Mhm.
So I'm very appreciative of the sacrifice he made, as well as my kids.
So you really honored him. I can understand there's going to be that certain amount of guilt or second guess, and we can always second guess ourselves, but you really honored his memory and honored him by taking care of your parents. And you were still there for him. You still loved him. You were in each other's lives. So it's just a beautiful story, um, but difficult. We are so close to out of time. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
When you were in going through all of this,
Mhm.
um, were you able to find moments where you could experience joy? Because we're hearing about it's difficult. Were you able to allow yourself to experience joy?
Oh yeah, the whole thing was, I mean, just the honor of being able to take care of my parents really was joy in itself. I really do. And I complain and I say it's hard, and it is. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's physically hard. It's backbreaking hard. But gosh, I love my parents. I would do it again. They excite me when they did little things, or they made some kind of accomplishment, or I saw them happy. Like, that was joyous to me, to see my kids interact with them, you know
Mhm.
to see them be okay with bathing them or dressing them or feeding them or whatever. That's joy to me. To see that my husband was really willing to share our life for the last, I'll call it 10 years with
Mhm.
my parents. As most people, you're going into a stage of life at this point for us where we would be, empty nesters, and nobody there to be that. So to have someone love me like that, to say, okay, it's okay that I share my world, my wife,
Mhm.
my world, with her and her parents. They're my parents too. He felt like that. So that brings me joy. And the last thing I think of, this experience of caring for them has given me such a story. And that I have some friends, some real good friends, who call me often because they're going through some of the same things, that I think the story is worthy of being shared, and the things that I learned from it, it's worthy of me putting it out there for a broader audience to know, like, this is how I handle these situations. This is some of the things you can expect. And everybody's situation is different, I know, but that gets me excited too. And it's what I'm thankful to you for giving me this opportunity, because I told you earlier, hey, you're giving me my initial platform to talk about, my next, which is going to be to share my experience as a caregiver. So yes, very much gave me joy, Bronwyn.
And that's why I wanted to end with that because we hear the story, we hear the struggles, but there was joy in
Oh,
that struggle. And I wanted to end with that moment of joy and understanding that yes, it was a hard thing to go through, but when you're doing a labor of love, there is still joy in it. Well,
absolutely.
we end each show with a call to action, something to do as a result of what you heard. Um, and the first thing I want to say is be willing to find joy in your pain,
Mhm.
whatever it is. You just stated it was pain, it was work, but it was a labor of love. Be willing to find joy in your pain. Get to know more about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's impacts our community in so many ways. Whatever it is, the saying is true. If America gets a cold, the African American community gets pneumonia. And things impact us because of our access, because of so many things. Don't be afraid of Alzheimer's. Yeah, it's real, it's scary, but don't be afraid of it. There's help out there. I always say vote, vote, vote. How you vote impacts everything. It can even impact what kind of care you do for your loved ones with Alzheimer's. And this is October. I'm wearing my pink because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So part of our call to action also is don't forget that. Get your mammogram. If you are a man, you got a woman in your life, tell her to get a mammogram. And I want to invite you all on November 11th for all listening in Arlington, Texas. I'll be doing a workshop called The Power of No, how to say no to others and yes to yourself. So many times as women, we are not good at saying yes to ourselves. We put everybody else first. So I'll have a QR code up at the end of this week, which, well, it's tomorrow. You can come back to the Facebook page, Black Mental Health is Black Health, and click on the QR code to register. It is November 11th, which is a Saturday from 10 to 12, and the cost is $45. Materials will be included. So join us for that. And once again, Kamala, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think you gave a different light to Alzheimer's. We think of all the negative, but to hear a personal story um, just makes it real. So thank you so much. Any last comment you'd like to make?
Well, no, thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back when my
Yes.
project is finished. And I just want to remind anyone who's caregiving, providing care for anyone, whether they have Alzheimer's or just impaired for whatever reason, is that they keep that person who they knew them to be in the front of their thoughts, so that will help get them through sometimes when it gets difficult.
Hmm. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank all of you who listened and share this. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button, share it. This is a story worth others hearing. Thanks. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.